What's up, YouTube? This is Scott McCumber with another video, and I'm going to be doing a little bit more philosophy. I'm kind of like, I have a lot of interests. You know, I like, obviously, I like work, I like play, I like uh, rest periods, I like everything in between. I'm in love with life. I like art. I like music. I like philosophy. I like ideas. I like, studying botany and technology. And you see you can see the Alex Gray print on my wall back there. You see the Dallas Mavericks banner in the back. I like sports. You're going to get a lot of stuff on this channel, okay? You're going to get a lot of different things on this channel. It's going to be a little all over the place, but there's a method to the madness. The method is my method, okay? Which is whatever I feel in the moment, whatever I decide I want to do, I'm going to do it. And the video could be about anything. Just remember that. It could be a movie reaction, it could be a TV show, could be a concert, could be a stand-up bit, could be a video on philosophy, could be a video on current events, could be anything, guys. So let's see what we've got today. So I'm a student of philosophy. I'm qualified to teach philosophy. I have a degree. My degree is from Truman State University. I majored in English. I got my bachelor's in English composition. I'm a very good speaker. I'm very well spoken. I'm a good communicator. I have a wide and broad vocabulary. I'm very loquacious. And sometimes I circumlocute a little bit, but please forgive me that trespass on your time and attention and energy, and just allow me to say what I've got to say. So I minored in philosophy and religion, but I've been a deep student of spirituality, mystic schools of the world, everything from the Kabbalah to Sufism to Gnosticism to Advaita Vedanta and Sankhya and Zen and Dogen, and I'm all over the place. I've been studying this stuff for a long time. I've also studied Western philosophy for a long time. First read Genealogy of Morality by Nietzsche when I was 15 years old, and that's changed my life. I've always been a lover, someone who loves wisdom. That's what a philosopher is and what they do. And one of my favorite philosophers is actually the man who inspired Friedrich Nietzsche. I said Nietzsche, I read Nietzsche back when I was a teenager, and it changed my life. And his teacher, I should say, the man that he owed most of his early career to, was a man by the name of Arthur Schopenhauer, who was a German idealist. And Arthur Schopenhauer is one of the most profound thinkers, in my opinion, in the history of Western philosophy. And he was also a very deep proponent and deep fan of the Upanishads. And he thought very highly of the Eastern schools and the Eastern wisdom. And I think you find a lot of those teachings, whether they be Buddhist or Hindu, I think you find a lot of those teachings embedded in Schopenhauer's work in certain ways. But that's more of a historical novelty and commentary on, and a biographical commentary on Schopenhauer. But what we're going to do today is we're going to go to the School of Life YouTube channel. They've got a video on Schopenhauer. It's about 9 minutes, and we're going to check this out, and I'm going to react to it. So this is Philosophy Schopenhauer School of Life, a YouTube channel. The URL for the YouTube video will be in the description, and we're just going to go ahead and watch this, and I'm going to give my
Buddhism,
feedback.
And his thought can best be read as a Arthur Schopenhauer was a German 19th century philosopher who deserves to be remembered today for the insights contained in his great work, The World as Will and Representation. Schopenhauer was the first serious Western philosopher.
Which, by the way, if I could ever pen a work as titanic and colossal as the world as will and as the world as will and representation, then I'd be able to retire. I would just I'd sell it to Hay House, or sell it to Penguin, or sell it to Harper Publishing, Harper Collins, and it'd be on shelves everywhere in every bookstore in America, and number one bestseller, and I would just retire. So this guy penned one of the most impactful works of philosophy in the Western canon. Remember that.
To get interested in Buddhism, and his thought can best be read as a Western reinterpretation and response to the enlightened pessimism found in Buddhist thought. In my 17th year, he wrote in an autobiographical text, I was gripped by the misery of life, as the Buddha had been in his youth, when he saw sickness, old age, pain, and death everywhere. The truth was that this world could not have been the work of an all-loving being, but rather that of a devil, who'd brought creatures into existence in order to delight in their sufferings.
Yeah, so there's an actual concept, I think it's a Gnostic concept, about the demiurge, and the demiurge is a philosophical mystic school that evolved in Christianity that essentially says that that this world and that the universe itself is the resulting creation of some devil or demon or some being that delights in suffering of the creatures that it's spawned into existence, which actually it's not a very common belief, but it actually resonates a lot more than you would think with our daily experience. If you really want to go down that dark rabbit hole, you can start to see how that would apply, and make a lot of things make sense. In other words,
like the Buddha, it was Schopenhauer's goal to dissect and then come up with a solution to this suffering. It's simply the fault of universities. Schopenhauer has always been taught in such a dry academic way that it has stopped him from being widely known, read, and followed. And yet, in truth, this is a man who, no less than the Buddha, deserves disciples, schools, artworks, and monasteries to put his ideas into practice.
Hallelujah.
It's not too late. Schopenhauer's philosophy starts by giving a name to a primary force within us, which he says is more powerful than anything else, our reason, logic, or moral sense, and which Schopenhauer terms the will to life, in German, the Wille zum Leben. The will to life is a constant force which makes us thrust ourselves forward, cling to existence, and look always to our own advantage. It's blind, dumb, and very insistent. What the will to life makes us focus on most of all is sex. From adolescence onwards, this will thrums within us, turns our heads constantly to erotic scenarios, and makes us do very weird things, the most weird of which is fall in love all the time. Schopenhauer was very respectful of love, as one might be towards a hurricane or a tiger. He deeply resented the disruption caused to intelligent people by infatuations, or what we'd call crushes, but he refused to conceive of these as either disproportionate or accidental.
But see, this is the key here, is that Schopenhauer dreamed of a cognition machine, of an individual that was not subject to these twists and turns of infatuation, romantic desire, and sexual desire. He said that these things were passions that were interrupting what could otherwise be a highly cognitive being's essential work. And I think that was an autobiographical reflection of who he was. He recognized in himself this genius that was constantly parsing out what the world was and all of these noumenal facts, and he discovered the will, and he penned this amazing book. And then he also had to deal with his more animalistic, more virile, more that rapacious hunger in him to follow the passions of the flesh. So what Schopenhauer, I believe, was actually craving was the birth of some being that was immune to these lower passions and could focus solely on the higher reasoning and the higher philosophy and the higher cognition. And I think what he was dreaming of was a sentient machine, an AI, because that's what AI is. Pure analytical skill. pure computation, pure contemplation, no sense of having any lower desires or any passions at all. So it's very interesting to see how even Schopenhauer was understanding that somehow our propensity towards these base appetites, that this was putting roadblocks in front of our own advancement as a species and as a civilization.
In his eyes, love is connected to the most important underlying project of the will to life, and hence of all of our lives, having children. Why all this noise and fuss about love, he asked. Why all the urgency, uproar, anguish, and exertion? Because the ultimate aim of all love affairs is actually more important than all other aims in anyone's life, and therefore it's quite worthy of the profound seriousness with which everyone pursues it. The romantic dominates life because, Schopenhauer wrote, what is decided by it is nothing less than the composition of the next generation, the existence and special constitution of the human race in times to come. Of course, we rarely think of future children when we're asking someone out on a date, but in Schopenhauer's view, this is simply because the intellect remains much excluded from the real resolutions and secret decisions of its own will. Why should such deception be necessary? Because for Schopenhauer, we would never reliably to reproduce unless we had first, quite literally, lost our minds. This was a man deeply opposed to the boredom, routine, expense, and sheer sacrifice of having children. Furthermore, Schopenhauer argued that most of the time, if our intellect were properly in charge of choosing who we could fall in love with, we would pick very different people to the ones we actually end up with. But we're ultimately driven to fall in love not with anyone we'll just get on with well, but with people whom the will to life recognizes as ideal partners for the project of producing what Schopenhauer bluntly called balanced children. All of us are a little bit unbalanced ourselves, he thought. We're a bit too masculine or too feminine, too tall or too short, too rational or too impulsive. If such imbalances were allowed to persist or were aggravated in the next generation, the human race would, within a short time, sink into oddity. The will to life must therefore push us towards people who can, on account of their compensating imbalances, cancel out our own issues. A large nose combined with a button nose promise a perfect nose. He argued that short people often fall in love with tall people and more feminine men with more assertive and masculine women. Unfortunately, this theory of balancing attraction led Schopenhauer to a very bleak conclusion, namely that a person who is highly suitable for producing a balanced child with is almost never, though we can't realize it at the time because we've been blindfolded by the will to life, very suitable for us. We should not be surprised, he wrote, by marriages between people who would never have been friends. Love casts itself on people who, apart from sex, would be hateful, contemptible, and even abhorrent to us. The will to life's ability to further its own ends rather than our happiness may, Schopenhauer implied, be sensed with particular clarity in that rather
because the essence of that point, it seems like he's how do we say this? It seems like Schopenhauer is saying that people that fall in love and that have children are almost always not compatible. They're opposites. We have this saying in our culture that says that opposites attract, but opposites are also complementary, and I think that complementary notion is what Schopenhauer is missing in his philosophy. I know lots of couples that are very different from each other and they're very compatible. But I also know, for example, people that would be contemptible of each other that were bonded over sex and had children. So it's a spectrum. But the deeper point here is that the will to life, what Schopenhauer just briefly, what he just says, the will, the noumenal will is about preservation of the species and about having children, and it doesn't really care about how happy those children are or about how blissful their experience is or how much suffering is minimized or about how much order there is versus chaos or about whether these pieces they all seem to fit and whether we have a balanced, harmonious society. He says that the will to life seeks balance, but deeper than that, the will to life seeks offspring, future generations, and it doesn't really care per se about the quality of that life.
Scary, lonely moment just after orgasm. He wrote, directly after copulation, the devil's laughter is heard. Watching the human spectacle, Schopenhauer felt deeply sorry for us. We're all just like animals, except because of our greater self-awareness, far more unhappy than animals. There are some poignant passages where Schopenhauer discusses the lives of different animals, but he dwells especially on the mole, a stunted monstrosity, his words, that dwells in damp, narrow corridors, rarely sees the light of day, and whose offspring look like gelatinous worms, but which still does everything in its power to survive and perpetuate itself. We're just like moles and just as pitiful. We are driven frantically to push ourselves forward. We want to get good jobs to impress prospective partners. We wonder endlessly about finding the one and are eventually briefly seduced by someone just long enough to produce a child and then have to spend the next 40 years in misery with them to atone for our errors. Schopenhauer was always beautifully and comically gloomy about human nature. There is only one inborn error, he wrote, and that's the notion that we exist in order to be happy. So long as we persist in this inborn error, the world will seem to us full of contradictions, for at every step, in great things and small, we are bound to experience that the world and life are certainly not arranged for the purpose of being happy. That's why the faces of almost all elderly people are deeply etched with disappointment. Schopenhauer offers two solutions to deal with the problems of existence. The first solution is intended for rather rare individuals that he called sages. Sages are able, by heroic efforts, to rise above the demands of the will to life. They see the natural drives within themselves towards selfishness, sex, and vanity, and override them. They overcome their desires, live alone, often away from big cities, never marry, and can quell their appetites for fame and status. In Buddhism, Schopenhauer points out, this person is known as a monk, but he recognizes that only a tiny number of us in any generation will ever go in for such a life. The second and more easily available and realistic therapy is to spend as long as we can with art and philosophy, whose task is to hold up a mirror to the frenzied efforts and unhappy turmoil created in all of us by the will to life. We may not be able to quell the will to life very often, but in the evenings at the theatre or on a walk with a book of poetry, we can step back from the day-to-day and look at life without illusion. The art Schopenhauer loved best is the opposite of sentimental. Greek tragedy.
Does anybody have an argument with those two things? I mean, honestly, this is the true beauty and genius of what Schopenhauer was saying. He's saying, well, life isn't designed for human happiness. We're self-aware. We are human. We know we're going to die. We know we're here right now, and we're all scrambling to try to attain this. We're all chasing states. We're all state chasing. We're chasing this feeling of happiness. And we're going about it in all these different ways. He said two options we can do to get out of this paradigm, this endless circling around this emotion or this state of being. It's that you could either try to rise above the will to life and you can override it in your own consciousness and you can be an ascetic or a monk. Or you can escape it briefly through art and philosophy. And how many of us spend so much of our time escaping this paradigm by binge watching TV shows, by reading a good book, by having a sweet, gentle conversation with a loved one, by imbibing in our favorite chemical substance, or whatever. Schopenhauer's point here is so illuminative and so powerful. It's really something to really, it holds the mirror up to the very human experience, in my view.
The aphorisms of La Rochefoucauld and the political theory of Machiavelli. Such works speak frankly about egoism, suffering, selfishness, and the horrors of married life, and extend a tragic, dignified, melancholy sympathy to the human race. It's fitting that Schopenhauer's own work fitted his description of what philosophy and art should do for us. It too is deeply consoling in its morbid, bitter pessimism. For example, he tells us, to marry means to do everything possible to become an object of disgust to each other. Every life history is the history of suffering. Life has no intrinsic worth, but is kept in motion merely by desire and illusion. After spending a lot of time trying yet failing to be famous and trying yet failing to have good relationships, towards the end of his life, Schopenhauer did eventually find an audience who adored his writings. He lived quietly in an apartment in Frankfurt with his dog, a white poodle whom he called Atman, after the world soul of the Buddhists, but whom the neighbouring children less respectfully referred to as Mrs. Schopenhauer. Shortly before his death, a sculptor made a famous bust of him. He died in 1860 at the age of 72, having achieved calm and serenity. He is a sage for our own times, someone whose bust should be no less widespread and no less revered than that of the Buddha he so loved.
I disagree with that. I don't think that Schopenhauer's Buddha. I think he underlined some very. He was a very perceptive man, and he made some very salient observations about the human condition. But I think he lived his life craving the asceticism and the monk status or life of those individuals he found in Buddhism, that he found in the teachings of the mystic schools of Hinduism. And I think that he craved that opportunity to be that kind of individual. But I don't think he ever got there. So it said, the video said he before he passed, he'd found calm and serenity. Whether that's true or not, all I'm saying is that I think that he was an aspiring monk. I don't think he ever really had the chance, because of his culture and his timing and his life and his circumstances, to really live like that and to be steeped in that kind of path, of that journey. So there's a bit of tragedy in Schopenhauer's life, and in who he was as a man. But one of my favorite philosophers, I would recommend Schopenhauer's ideas to anybody that wants to grow into a much more nuanced and a much deeper perspective on what human nature is, and to learn to hold the mirror up to oneself and say, well, why do I really do the things that I do? Well, it's got to be because of this, and it all circles back to the will to life, and Schopenhauer just, I think that in his philosophy, that that master thought, the will to life, I think it was his admission that everything that he did as a person was in service to this other thing, and it's just it's so profound. It's so profound, and I hope that all of you research and read about Schopenhauer, research and read the world as will as and representation. Research and read about his relationship cross-textually with Friedrich Nietzsche, his influence on Nietzsche, and we should be talking more about Schopenhauer's work and his life, because he was a profound genius, great thinker. So that's all I have to share today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to be doing more videos, and we'll see where it leads. And that's all I got to say today, guys. I hope you're having a good day, good morning, good night, wherever you are in the world. Stay safe out there, and leave a comment, subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.